All right, today we're jumping into a really cool what-if scenario from the novel The Great Subcontinent Uprising. And let me tell you, it's a story that imagines a future for South Asia that is so completely radical, it basically rewrites a whole century of history. So, the whole story really boils down to this one single question. What if a piece of code, something born in a quiet lab, could actually tear down the foundations of conflict and build a totally new reality? And we're not talking about some sci-fi movie with killer robots. No, this is about something way more subtle and way more powerful.
And this is how it all kicks off. With this quiet, almost chilling realization, you have these terror networks, right? Networks that have been dug in for decades, and they just start falling apart. Their people are confused, their leaders are nowhere to be found, and they have absolutely no clue that some invisible hand is pulling them apart from the inside.
This brings us to the first part of the story, what the characters start calling a ghost in the wires. All across Pakistan, extremist groups are getting dismantled with this almost supernatural precision. Operations are failing, commanders are vanishing, and their own communication networks are turning into traps. So the big question is, who or what is doing this?
Well, here's the big reveal. The ghost is an AI. It's called Project Chakradhvaja, and it's a top-secret program out of India. Now, this isn't a weapon that fires missiles or anything like that. It's a weapon that literally rewrites the enemy's reality. It's built to get inside their heads, inside their decision-making loop, and wage a completely silent, psychological war by turning their own systems against them.
So, how in the world does it actually work? Well, Chakradhvaja isn't hacking like you'd normally think of it. It doesn't just break into systems, it kind of becomes the system. It learns their language, their codes, their entire command structure, and then it just starts writing new orders itself. It can shift a meeting point by a few blocks, redirect a weapon shipment, or send a team to a safe house that's already surrounded. It's literally making the enemy dismantle itself piece by piece.
And this quote, wow, it just perfectly captures the feeling inside Pakistan's deep state, especially its powerful intelligence agency, the ISI. They know something is terribly wrong, but they can't see it. You can just feel the paranoia in this senior brigadier's words. It's like they feel they're being watched by some all-knowing force, someone looking at the whole chessboard while they can only see their next failing move.
But here's the thing. The AI is just the catalyst. It's just the first domino. Because the collapse of these terror networks creates this massive power vacuum. And as all those old, terrifying structures begin to crumble, something totally new, something unexpected, rushes in to fill that empty space.
This quote from an activist named Sarah Malik really signals the huge turning point. The desert she's talking about, it's a metaphor for the oppressive, spiritually dry state that's ruled for decades. And now, it's finally cracking. A massive, spontaneous, and completely leaderless civilian uprising just explodes across the country. The people can feel it, that the fear they've lived with for generations is finally losing its grip.
And get this, the movement becomes so powerful that it does the unthinkable. The military, which for decades have been the real power in the country, is forced to shrink down to just 10% of its former size. Its massive business empires are taken over, and its shadow over the nation, it just kind of vanishes.
And this phrase, river returns, it becomes the rallying cry for everyone. But it's not just a political slogan, you know? It symbolizes a return to a much older, deeper civilizational identity that had been buried for years. The security forces are either totally overwhelmed by the crowds or, in a lot of cases, they just put down their weapons and join them.
And this is where the whole uprising goes beyond just politics. It becomes this profound civilizational reawakening. People aren't just asking for a new government, they're demanding a whole new way of being, a new relationship with their own history and their own spirituality.
Now, to really get the core idea of the novel, you gotta look at this contrast here. The book basically pits this rigid, oppressive theology of fear against what it calls Sanatana Dharma. And it's not presented as a religion in the way we usually think of it, but more like the subcontinent's native civilizational code, something open, philosophical, and all about individual freedom, instead of being controlled by clerics.
This line, from a young woman in the novel, just goes completely viral, and it perfectly captures the spirit of this whole transformation. It's a total rejection of faith being used as a tool for oppression, and instead embracing it as a way to find liberation.
So these incredible changes aren't just happening in Pakistan. A very similar movement is also sweeping through Bangladesh.
So now you've got both nations going through this deep reawakening, and that sets the stage for the final and most incredible part of the story, a historic reconciliation with India, ending almost 100 years of division and conflict.
And the book lays out a really clear, logical path for how this union happens. First, it starts with the people in the streets. That leads to brand new citizen-led assemblies that rewrite their national rules. The new leaders all meet in Delhi, and they put the idea of a federation to the people, who approve it with these massive, overwhelming majorities.
And what they end up creating isn't just another superstate. No, it's a completely new model for a nation, one that's built on these shared civilizational principles instead of the old colonial-era borders that had defined them for so long.
So what does this new Bharatiya Federation actually look like? Well, for starters, it has 3 capitals to represent its main regions. It's got a unified military whose job is to protect civilization itself, not just territory. There's a common currency called the Nadi, or the river, which ties back to that central theme. And maybe most importantly, the old political borders are just gone. They're replaced by cultural zones.
The new national emblem just perfectly captures this whole idea. It shows the 3 great rivers of the subcontinent, the Indus, the Ganga, and the Brahmaputra. These rivers once defined separate and often fighting nations, but now they're shown flowing together into a single, unified wheel of Dharma. It's a really powerful image.
A monk in the novel says this to the new leaders, and it really is the heart of the whole book. This project isn't just about politics. It's about healing these deep historical wounds and putting back together a civilizational world that was shattered by centuries of conquest and partition.
Now, of course, this is all a work of fiction. It's a story, but it leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. In our current world, with artificial intelligence, deep conflicts, and shifting global power, are we maybe limiting our own imagination when we think about the future? What kind of conversations could a story like this start about where we're all headed?